Dr. Shila Patel. I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist, retired now.
What inspired you to get into the mental health field?
Well, it's a really interesting journey. I did not really realize why I had gone into psychiatry till I started writing my books after I retired. And one of the things that had happened to me at a very young age is my best friend at the age of 16 tried to commit suicide. And that in itself was difficult to accept it. But at the age of 16, you're really not thinking too much outside of yourself, even though it's a traumatic experience. Then, when I got into medical school, I had a colleague who is a very close friend of mine, had a very bad episode of depression. And he could not get out of bed, and he basically stay was not attending the classes, and after 7 years of going through medical school he had to drop out. And later on we found out that he had a very strong history of bipolar disorder in his family, and so he ended up having the manic episodes, the depression episodes. But he chose to live with his parents, who were extremely supportive of him, and with the right medications he was able to get help, stay on the medications, have the support of the family, and became an accountant. And I'm really happy to note that even though he continues to need the medications, he's led a very productive life, even though he has chosen not to marry because of his severe journey with bipolar. And so watching him and dealing with him for over so many years, I really felt like if I could make such a difference in people's lives with mental health, I strive my best to do the medications, get them in the right therapy, get them on the right track to become as productive as they were able to. And I think people really underestimate the impact of mental health, not only on their own lives, but with the family and the financial burden on the community. And since the pandemic, there has been such an uptick with mental health. And that was one of the main reasons why I came out of retirement and decided to write 3 books. And I promote a lot of mental health through the podcasts and shows like yours.
With the books, how did that feel to get all your thoughts, ideas, feelings on the page?
Well, it was very reassuring. I never wanted to be a writer, first of all. And living in Cape Canaveral, there are so many brainiacs that are around this area. They're all engineers and astronauts and people like that. And they knew of my background, that I'd had 25 years in psychiatric practice. And I have treated thousands of patients. And when people have issues, they would come up to me and ask my advice. And they all suggested that maybe I should write some books. And it was very rewarding. People need something to reference to. And one of the things that was very rewarding for me when I was asking for people to do reviews, and I had sent out the books to several different either librarians or grandmothers or parents or single mothers. And most of them said that they really felt they understood mental health a lot better, and they were able to have more patience with their family members who were going through this journey. And so, yes, overall, it was a very rewarding experience. I would obviously like to be more popular and have more people read the books but there are so many self-help books out there, and I understand that. And so what I did was I had like 250 copies printed out, and people who wanted to buy them, I let them, or I gave out a lot of the copies, especially to college students, because my editor was a college professor and a librarian. And so she knew of a lot of students who would be struggling. And so I gave out a lot of my books to them, hopefully that they would be able to read some. Sadly, people don't read very much these days. Everybody's relying on the internet or getting their news on the phone or iPads, and they have such a short um, attention spans, so you have to get your message through real quickly. And sadly, people don't read the books, but if they do, then they're able to get a lot of help and direction.
For me, I live with bipolar disorder too, and it
Right,
took
I read
me
that in your startup. So, how have you been doing?
I've been doing good. The big thing is I got the right treatment. I
Good,
take medication and
good.
I see a therapist and a psychiatrist, but I was a little hesitant at first. Do you see some of your clients just nervous when they come to you for the first time?
Oh, absolutely. I think mental health still has such a big stigma. And
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I've really tried to work hard, not only during my profession, but even since then, is to ask people to get the help. And the people that do extremely well are the ones that have the support, not only with family and friends. And sadly, just in the last couple of years, I have lost two young people to suicide. One was a dentist, and because of a broken relationship. And then very recently, in the last few months, my cousin's son committed suicide. And again, over a relationship and feeling overwhelmed. And one of the things that I've always advocated to my patients is that you need to not have suicide as an option. Take it off the table. And one of the things that people have to understand is that people do get better from mental health, just like yourself. Like you said, if you get the right treatment and
Yeah.
help, people do get better. The other thing is that you have to have patience. It's not like an infection where you take your antibiotic and you're going to feel better in a few days. You have to do the work. You have to make the changes. You have to understand what's going on. You have to understand that this is a long-term illness. And just like with diabetes or anything else, I used to tell my patients that mental health is almost, if you can understand a computer and how it's wired, our brain is wired that way. And there are certain um, mishaps with that wiring, and it is up to us to try and correct all that with the medications, the therapy, and the wiring can get connected correctly, and there is hope. And that's one of the main things that I try and advocate is that get past the stigma, get help. You can get better, and there is help out there if you reach for it.
Do you see your clients' confidence level rise as they go through the process?
Oh, absolutely. I have a nurse that I had in my practice years ago, and she has continued to keep in touch with me. She was the one that was most devastated when I was retiring. And she has kept in touch with me, and I have responded to her as things have come up. And it was so gratifying for me that she has overcome so many obstacles and she feels so much better for herself, living her life the way she wants to, becoming grandmother, having the children, and how she's struggling with her son and his anger issues right now. But she went back to becoming a part time nurse in a hospice setting. And she says, I know I lose a lot of patients, but it is so rewarding for me to give them that solace that they need at the end of their journey. And that is such a far cry from how she was when I first met her. And yes, I think patients who really do well and overcome this do feel a lot better about themselves, and their self-esteem definitely improves.
And when I was doing my research, I saw a lot of wellness ideas and stuff with yoga. How does taking care of your physical health help your mental health?
Let me give you a personal history right now,
Yeah.
because in the last 5 years, I have been helping a neighbor who lives by himself, who is another one of these brainiacs and is working on clean energy. And he developed tongue cancer. He used to be an Air Force pilot, and he smoked for 50 years with all the stress and everything. And I became his main caregiver because with his cancer, they removed part of his tongue. He had difficulty speaking, and being a physician, I went to all his doctor's appointments and everything. And recently, my significant other has developed cancer in his throat. And dealing with two cancer patients at the same time is pretty overwhelming.
Right.
But what I have done is I make sure that I swim or do my Pilates or do my weights. Take time for yourself. And that's one of the things that a lot of the people who have understood what journey I am on always reach out to me and say, Sheila, take care of yourself first, because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of others the way you want to. And even though sometimes you feel really helpless when they are going through really difficult times, you have to ground yourself, because if you are, let's say, a little dismantled, it's a little bit harder to help the other person. So definitely, whatever grounds you, whether it is yoga, meditation, listening to good music, taking walks, reading a book, exercising on a regular basis, there's so many things that don't cost anything. But if you do that, you are going to be so much more grounded to be able to support other people and the people who are also going through this illness. That just because it's a mental health illness doesn't mean that you have to let your physical health suffer.
Right.
A lot of people turn to alcohol and drugs to make them numb or feel better. And sadly, that just makes all the mental health issues even worse. And, it causes even more problems going forward.
How does it feel for you to help others?
One of the questions on one of the other podcasts was, what is one thing that you cherish the most that you have done in your life? And, I used to think I have helped thousands of patients, and I felt really good about my profession, about what I was able to do for others. But more recently, as I got older, I am also a caregiver for my 90-year-old mother.
Oh,
My
wow.
father passed away 10 years ago. And my mother has almost replaced me in my father's position as far as taking care of the estate, taking care of the bills, because they had that real dichotomy of a relationship where mom was the housemaker. She took care of the kids, she did the cooking, and dad used to take care of the bills. So mom has never written a check, she's never opened a piece of mail. And so taking care of mom for the last 10 years since my father passed away, and then also being a caregiver and seeing my friend do so much better. And he's still doing really well with his treatments, and he's been cancer free for about 18 months. And that to me, making such a difference in one life. One of the things that I've always ended my books with is saying, if you have made a difference in one person's life, you've led a good life and you leave behind a good legacy. And I just really have cherished this part of my journey.
I feel the same way. I love, talking to people like you. It makes
Right.
me, you know, even a little bit making a world a different place.
Right. And I think that your show definitely is doing that, because I think, like you said, if people hear more about from people like you who have not only taken the journey, but also people who have helped along
Yeah.
others on this journey, is a big plus, because it gives hope to people that there is time to get better. It's not a sentence, a death sentence. People
Right.
do get better. And that is why when I hear about especially young people committing suicide, there were 50,000 suicides in 2023, which is so sad, because that's all those lives just lost, people who had just become hopeless. And the bad part in this country is that the politicians talk a lot about mental health, but when you look at all the states that have really taken away all the funding for the mental health, it's those politicians who are blaming mental health for a lot of the shootings and
Yeah.
gun control and all that, and they're the ones that are not promoting or putting funds where mental health is needed, because if they could fix a lot of those problems, maybe some of those other issues will become less.
Yeah. Focus on the positive as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, where do you want to see your mission, say, in the next 3 to 5 years?
I just want to continue to try and be more on the podcast, be more on radio shows, be more vocal about mental health. The invention of the 988 number where people
Yeah.
can reach out for mental health has been a really benefit for people who are struggling and people who feel desperate and helpless, that there might be somebody at the end of that phone line. And apparently it has been a very popular and well used number. But um when when I was talking about my cousin who recently lost her son to suicide, she asked me to talk at his, it wasn't really a memorial, but just a celebration of his life gathering of all the family members. And she said, would you mind speaking? Because she was too devastated to speak herself. And I said, you know, I told all the family members that we've already lost two young people in our family, and we should not have to go through this again. Our family needs to know that there are people you can reach out to. There's help to be got. And yes, there are going to be very stressful times in your lives that people are going to feel overwhelmed. But just like right now, I reach out to all my friends and even just their little messages to me saying, hang in there, things will get better. Um, it goes a long way to know that other people are thinking about you. Drop a little card off to people, just make them smile for the day. I love a saying, and I say that on all my podcasts and radio shows. Dr. Sanjay Gupta always says that giving a smile to a stranger is like giving CPR to the
Yeah.
heart. And I think that that is so important to remember is you just don't know what that other person's day is going like. And just reaching out and saying hello and putting a smile on that face. Because when you smile to somebody, they are going to respond with a smile, whether you feel like smiling or not. And I think that is so important that people have forgotten in this day of texting and emailing, that just like with my mom, I pick up the phone every day and talk to her for about 15 to 20 minutes. And then every month I go and spend 10 days with her to make sure that, everything else is taken care of. But that is just so important for people to realize that just little things in life make a big difference.
What are some of the things you've learned from your mom?
She is a incredible power of wisdom, I would say. She tells us that there are things in life. Which we just celebrated her 90th birthday, and we're very lucky that she's just got hearing loss and she's got a knee problem, so she's not able to walk around as well as she used to. But having patience, accepting things when things happen, and like she tells me, everybody has to go one day, but just remember the messages. And she always talks about my dad after his passing, that look at all the people that he has helped in his life. And whenever you think about your dad, there's a saying in our Indian language that you almost smell roses when you think about somebody who has passed, who has led a good life. And I think it's a great saying that if people think about you after you have passed and they remember you in a more positive way and say, hey, that was a good person, they did the right things, they helped other people. And isn't that the legacy we all want to leave behind, rather than just the fame and the wealth and the power that so many of our politicians are advocating as being the top of the pyramid right now?
Yeah.
For me, the top of the pyramid is the support and the legacy you leave behind. And that comes a lot from what my mom teaches me.
You talked a little bit about the impact of 988. Have you seen the stigma of just talking about mental health lessening a little bit?
Absolutely. I think people just, especially when I used to practice and when people would come in initially, that, they would say, I don't want people to know. But, one of the things that I've found out now and doing some research for the books, and when I do some research for the podcast and that when people are being asked in the workforce, if you had access to mental health, 58% say that would be very important for the workplace to put into place. And I think people are becoming a lot more open to saying, and I think that seeing people like Simone Biles and Michael Phelps, who were very revered with their gymnastics and swimming, that they came out and they talked about their mental health and their depression and what the stress can do to their careers. And, seeing people like a lot of the comedians that have died, Robin Williams.
Yeah.
We think about comedians as always being happy people, but when you look into their history, Owen Wilson's another one that is a comedian and has a long history of depression. Um, one of those Friends people that died,
Yeah.
due to the ketamine because they couldn't sleep. So many of the artists, struggle with difficulty with drugs and taking more medication. Michael Jackson, who was
Yeah.
one of the really good artists, just could not sleep. And sleep is another thing that I advocate a lot, that it is so important to get restful sleep, even if you have to take naps in the day or whatever it takes. But, your body needs to shut down. It needs to get rid of those toxins from the brain, which only sleep can do. And so that is one thing that Americans are very bad about, is not giving themselves that 7 or 8 hours rest or sleep that they need. They feel like, there's so much going on, or now with all the streaming shows and
Yeah.
TVs and the media always have what they talk about, having these hooks where they're always saying, oh, we'll come back with this storyline, and so you just keep pursuing, trying to get there, and sadly people compromise themselves and the quality of life.
How can people reach out to you and learn more?
Well, I have a website, and it's www.dr. Shila, but you have to spell it Shila Patel, PATEL.com. So it's very easy. www.drshilapatel.com. And if they go to my website, they can get access to my books, and they can know some of the podcasts that I have done, and they can look me up, or they can just go on Amazon and look up books by Dr. Shila Patel, and they'll be able to come through, they'll be able to see all the books that I've written and scripts, the links to the different information on the books.